Good evening. Welcome to New Tracks. My name is Jim Kellow, and I'm your host for this evening. New Tracks is where mentors help modelers build. Our goal is to encourage model building and help modelers like you develop the modeling skills, techniques, and most importantly, the confidence every one of us needs to build the models we really want. We want you to experience the thrill of saying, I built that. On each New Track show, the best model railroaders demonstrate innovative new products, modeling techniques, new technology, and answer your modeling questions. New Tracks is a great opportunity to have talented modelers become your mentors. If you're new to the show, welcome. If you've been with us before, welcome back. We hope all of you come back often and tell your friends to join us. We currently have over 1,000 subscribers on either our website or our YouTube channel. We hope that you'll become a subscriber. And on YouTube, all you have to do is go to our channel, New Tracks Modeling, and click on the subscribe button, ring the bell, and check all. You'll receive all the notices for the future shows and the login links. We currently have over 300 YouTube videos that you're also able to see a lot of the past shows. On Zoom, you can watch, ask questions, speak to other modelers, show your modeling live, and participate in the lively after show. To join on Zoom, all you have to do is go to our website, newtracksmodeling.com, check subscribe. You'll get an email from the website. You'll confirm the email, then you're officially subscribed and you'll get all of the future notices. Please feel free to share the login links that you receive either on Zoom or YouTube with your friends and encourage them to join us and participate in our shows. Finally, if you want to be a guest presenter and show your models and techniques, we have several ways that you can do that. Send me an email to Jim Kellow at newtracksmodeling.com and let's discuss. I really prefer the telephone for something like this. And if you'll send me your telephone number in that email, I'll give you a call back. Or if you'd like to donate a little bit of your time and volunteer to help us with our events, or our YouTube video productions, or the website, or just to give us ideas for future shows, please send me an email about this to the same address. Well, thanks so much for being here tonight. Now let's get on with tonight's show. Good evening. Well, listen, we have a new volunteer that is joining us tonight. I'd like to introduce Daniel Lutz. And Daniel's going to help us produce the shows. So Daniel, thank you so much for volunteering. We need all the help we can get, and we certainly do appreciate it. Before let me announce here the upcoming build-alongs. We've got one change. Chris Corse's company, Conowingo Models, instead of starting their build-along on January the 26th, they'll be starting it on in May sometime of 2022 because of the production problems that Chris ran into, trying to get all of the details worked out and so forth. So we just pushed him back a while. So he'll start that in May of next year. February the 9th, Paul Reeves, owner of Kershaw Models, will be building an O-scale model with Martin Breckbilt, MMR. February the 23rd, Bruce Nicholson, owner of Seaport Model Works, is going to start building one of his kits of a ferry, passenger ferry in HO scale. And that ought to really be interesting. It'll be the first model boat that we've done on one of the build-alongs. I hope you'll participate in these as they come up, because the modelers and the manufacturers that are providing them to you are trying to do everything they can to encourage modelers to build and to give you all the help that they can possibly do to encourage you. And I really do appreciate all of the efforts that they're putting forth. If you want to participate in one of the build-alongs and actually build a model on the show, then send me an email and let me know. Because we're scheduling right now in May of next year. And so it's certainly not going to be something that you'd have to start anytime real soon. If you've got a modeling question, we have a website with a form on it. You fill out the form, you ask your question, and we'll get you an answer on either on the show or directly from one of the modelers on the show to your email address. The build, my build is starting tonight, a little bit later, as the featured modeler part of our show. And the next one after that is December the 22nd. And Chris, I'll turn it over to you to talk about that one.
All right, thanks, Jim. Yeah, let's go to the share screen real quick here. Oops, here we go. All right, so this is your opportunity to share what you've been working on, or something that you're proud of, or maybe it's something you need help with, or something cool you found. So anyway, please bring it to my attention. You can drop me an email at railrunner130@hotmail.com to participate in the December 22nd version of the My Build program. So I'll turn it back over to you, Jim.
Thank you so much, Chris. Now I'd like to go to, well, let me see, I better start over here so that Earl can get the segments right. Let's go now to Ted Becker, who is going to give us our quick tip for the evening. Ted, welcome.
Okay, thank you. Let me share screen here. What I'm going to talk about tonight are some suppliers, some unusual sources you may not be aware of that I've discovered and have purchased items from. The first of them is Zorro Tools, spelled with one R. He does not carve the letter Z in your shirt or anything. But the thing that attracted me to Zorro was the wide variety and selection of stuff they have. This is a one-stop shopping place. If you look at glues, they have everything, and they have all sizes. They got Gorilla and Crazy Glue and Elmer's and Tight Bond. They have this DAP contact cement that I use for gluing down cork and laminating foam. The beauty of this place is they have all sizes of just about everything. You go to other shops and maybe one shop will have Elmer's glue and someone else will have the DAP contact cement and another one will have the Gorilla, and then you buy that. The price may be a little better than at Zorro, but it's plus shipping. So you combine all these in one order. And the beauty is this for small orders, their standard flat rate shipping is $5. And my most recent order, which is supposed to arrive this afternoon, I went over the $50 limit, and so my shipping was free. They also have things like brass. Jim may be interested in this. They have a fairly complete selection of brass stock, not the smaller stuff we like for model building. They got the K&S products. And if I go back to the home page and just go down through the categories of stuff they have, They got tools, bits, dies, tape, stuff that we may not need in model railroading, like pipe fittings and motors and things like that. I even landed on, you can buy bedroom slippers in 100 pair lots if you want to put bedroom slippers in your hotel rooms. Anyhow, that's Zorro.com. These links will be available in a docx file on the website, I'm told, and I think someone is going to be posting them in the chat while I'm talking. Okay, the other supplier with a clever name, and this is a gold mine for model builders, is Widget Supply. Widget Supply has just about everything you can imagine Dremel. They have every Dremel accessory, parts for tools. They have the most complete stock of Dremel stuff of any supplier I've seen. They also have a very complete supply of X-Acto and Excel knives, blades. They have a good selection of other hobby tools and hobby supplies, crafting wire, and don't neglect, don't neglect the jeweler's tools. They had a wide selection of jeweler saw blades. And I've done business with them. They're a good business to deal with. So I highly recommend them. And they're a little bit dear to me because they're down in Oregon. They're practically in my backyard. And then the last one is, I like it because of the funny name. This is Evil Mad Scientist Laboratories. You gotta love a company named Evil Mad Scientist Supplier. But they have a lot of electronic modules. They have robot kits and stuff, but they have some lighting kits. One of which would be interest to a model railroader is this. It's a solderless kit for making a flickery flame. So if you want to have a campfire or in a structure, a flame in a fireplace, this is an easy way to do it. And at $8.95, it's a lot less expensive than some of the other flame modules you might buy. But that's not all they have. They have all kinds of electronic kits, clock kits. A lot of these aren't directly related to model routing, but they're adaptable. They've got a lot of electronic components. Again, this is kind of a one-stop shopping place. And the neatest thing they have, which has nothing to do with model railroading, but if you get one and learn to use it, you're going to impress the heck out of your grandkids. This is an American controlled machine for decorating Easter eggs. And that is all I have for tonight.
I love the name. That's fantastic. Thanks, Ted.
You're welcome.
Well, now I'd like to go to Greg Cassidy, who is building the HO scale model for the Motrak build. As you know, Motrak, we've got 4 separate modelers building the same kit in 4 different scales. And Greg is building his in HO scale. So Greg, I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you, Jim. Let me fire up my share screen. So tonight, I'm filling in. Clark was under the weather and he was going to be presenting tonight, but we'll get him back on once he's back on his feet. I'll be doing part 4 of the Motrak model build along, and this is the HO scale version that I'm doing. And part 4 is going to be adding the roof and the cupola and a couple other odds and ends like that. The first thing that I did was add the corner trim onto the cupola end walls and then trimmed it to the correct angle. One of the things about the kit that I really like, the roof panels actually have scribing on them for the shingling line, so you don't have to draw them on with your pencil. Once I put the trim on the ends, I assembled the cupola, and it didn't need any bracing, so I just put a little bit of square stock in there to hold it together while the glue was setting up. And then I filed the bottom ends to be flush with the angle. Then I started on the shingles. These are some real nice cedar type shingles that come with the kit. And one of the things that I like using are Copic markers. You could also use maybe some stains or some pastels to color these, but Copic markers work great in this. Copic markers are alcohol based and they're translucent. And you can use them just like a marker. They have a very fine tip if you need to, or a broad tip. And because they're translucent, you can layer stuff on and make them darker the more you use them. So this is how my shingles came out once I started cutting them. And then I just applied them to the roofing pieces following the lines and using some canopy glue. Once I was done with that, I painted the underside of the roof overhang. And after I had put the shingles on, I had a little bit of a bend in the roof, so I let it sit like that overnight just to take the bend out. The next day I went ahead and glued one side of the roof onto the building, and I used some weights to hold it in place. If you remember the kit, the roof is a lot longer than the structure because it goes over part of the shed on the platform as well. And then I glued the other side on, again using weights, and I also used the weights to hold the rafters in place as they were drying. And that helps to hold all the roof together in one, one nice strong assembly. Excuse me. Then after that, I used an angle gauge to get the measurement of the roof pitch. And I made a couple pieces of trim to fit on the cupola once I put it on the building. Once I had the roof glued on, you have your valley down the middle here. So I just used a strip from the cedar shingles. I colored it with some more markers and then glued on the cupola, and that's where my trim is. The next thing I wanted to do was add a stovepipe to mine. Mine's converted into a coffee house, so they have a little kitchen in there. So I just put a stovepipe that I had put a pin into, drilled a hole in the side of the cupola after weathering it with some pastels and pencils, and then glued it in place. The last thing as far as attaching the roof is the support posts for the overhang on the platform. I have a whole set of stains, and I have strip wood that I've stained with each one that I keep marked. So it's easy to just pick whichever color I want and then pull that stain out. So I went ahead and stained the pieces in the Hunter line brown, Cordovan brown, I think. Now, those pieces were fairly thick, especially for an HO kit. Don't usually deal with strip wood that thick, but since these are posts, I wanted to make sure I cut them flush. So using the Ultimation slicer, it's easy to get a nice slice with it ended up flush at the bottom. And then I was able to glue it on the underside of the overhang. And that's it for attaching the roof and the cupola and the shingles. My next presentation will be part 5, but that won't be for a few weeks. We'll still have Bob and Phil and Clark doing their part 4s. So back to you, Jim.
Greg, thank you so very much. By the way, if you could hold your questions until we get through with all of the build-alongs tonight, I would appreciate it because we do have a full show. But I do want everybody to be able to ask their questions if they have some. The next build-along we have is the all-nation Waffle side boxcar being built by David Schultz. David, welcome.
Welcome, everyone. We're back in the great state of Minnesota here, northern Minnesota. This week, we're going to do the underframe. We're going to show all the brake components, how all of this stuff works. We hope we got all these pictures in order this time. Usually I get a couple out of order, but let's give it a shot. So this is kind of where you should be. We're running out of parts. John throws extra parts in the box on some of them, but anyway, this should be about what you have left. The car is assembled. You've got the trucks mounted, draft gear in place. We'll talk about that draft gear a little bit later. I also have a sprue of intermountain ladders and pieces. If you're not happy with the ladders on there, think they're a little thick or clumsy looking, you can use the intermountain ones. You could also remove the rungs off of the ladders, which are in orange down there in the bottom right, and put wire in if you prefer to do it that way. Many different options. So anyway, we'll start with on the draft gear. Now, I never liked the way Walthers had done it. They put a spring in there so the pieces bounce against it. Cushion draft gear don't work that way. They work kind of like I like that air cylinder on your storm door. You pull that out and you'll hear air going into it. And then when you release it, the air slowly releases and that makes the door close nice and soft. Well, it kind of works on that same principle, but the big cylinder that's in between is full of oil. And there's one piston inside there that goes to each of the draft gear. And there's a hole in that piston. So as you stretch the train out, the oil is forced from one side to the other. And unlike air, liquids will not compress. So of course the draft gear will slowly move out until it bottoms out. Well, I kind of like that same operation. So what I did is I just glued the two stops in there. You push it up against the truck screws, and then I glued those two blocks that you see in close to the center of the car there. And those act as stops also. And we will come back to that towards the end here. Then of course there's the little braces, because on the actual railroads, they don't want that piece breaking and falling on the tracks. So they have pieces that they mount to the center sill in case something does dramatically fail. The piece won't fall out onto the track. It holds it up in there. So I glued those braces in there. Your control valve, which a lot of people call the triple valve. Most air brake people would go nuts if you call it that. But anyway, the control valve, you'll want to drill 5 holes in the pipe bracket, kind of like on a domino, 2 above, 1 in the middle, 2 below, for the piping. And then you mount your pieces on the car, kind of where you want them. As Martin had mentioned earlier, the brake cylinder always points towards the handbrake end, and you should try to line it up with where the handbrake is mounted on the end of the car, so that the rods are fairly straight. The control valve is mounted towards the outside edge of the car. That way carmen don't have to crawl underneath if they have to change portions on there. And then the reservoir is on the opposite side. They like to try to keep, the manufacturers like to try and keep these pieces straight with one another. They don't want a lot of bends in the pipes that go to these pieces. They kind of want to keep the air flowing as quickly as possible. And the more bends you have, the slower the air goes. So they try to keep them in line with each other. Sometimes that's not possible, but on a boxcar, it is. This is how they would do it. So there's where I mounted the pieces. So you can kind of get an idea where it is towards the center of the car. And yeah, there's just another view of the pieces mounted. Apparently I took 2 pictures of that. And then for the end, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put the brake pipe in. So on the ends of the car, I made these little pieces out of some 20 thousandths plastic. Just drill a small hole in it for the pipe to go through. And there it is mounted on the car. So you can see where you can kind of see where the brake pipes, I've got it partially mounted there. And so this is where the wire will stick out to simulate the brake pipe. I also mounted the handbrake piece on there. You guys will want to do the same thing right underneath where that pair of brackets are right there. The one thing I didn't do and I forgot is drill a hole in the bottom of that handbrake piece. Just a small hole where like a 20 thousandths wire will slip into. And I'll show you that a little later why we're going to do that. But it's a lot easier to do it before you mount it on the car, trust me. So anyway, to mount the brake pipe, now what I did is I glued little 20 thousandths pieces on the sill or on the brackets underneath to bring that brake pipe up even with the sill. And what I do is I make little U-shaped brackets, and that's what's going to hold the brake pipe in place. And on the real railroads, they're not allowed to weld a brake pipe onto the car. So the brake pipe always has to be held with some kind of, usually a U-bolt. Now, sometimes the brackets are angle irons that are welded to the floor. In this case, I'm just going to stick it on I've seen it both ways. And so anyway, you make these little U-shaped brackets. And I got my pictures out of order again. Okay, here's where the levers are going to go on this car. And what I do is I used pieces of 30 thousandths wire, and I drilled holes in the center sill to make the bracket to hold the levers. On the one on the right is the bigger bracket. That one I had to make. On the other end of the car, it's a smaller, and that one came with the kit. So I just drilled out the holes, and that one only requires one bracket on the one side because it basically attaches to the center sill on the other one, on the other end. And I just put a little piece of plastic underneath there to make the lever look even underneath there. So, and there I am. I've got the brake pipe mounted. That's 30 thousandths wire. Simulates 1.5-inch pipe, which is typical of what they use on manufacturers these days. And I just drill a hole on either side of the brake pipe. So I drilled one side, there's the other. And then I insert the little loops that I had made into the car, dip them in super glue, shove them down in there, and that'll hold those pieces in place. All right, here is what the pipe bracket is gonna, I told you to drill it in 5 different holes. And this is the way the pipes come out of the car. Now the car floor, so this is basically like the car is sitting upside down. The 2 reservoirs come out of, on the reservoir on the car, there's two sides to the reservoir. You've got your service side of the reservoir and then your emergency side of the reservoir. Both of those will charge from these 2 bottom ports. So that's your reservoirs over. The retainer fits in the middle. And then on the right-hand side, the brake cylinder, that's where that one goes. And the brake pipe will come into the, what'll be the bottom of the brake pipe bracket here in the picture that I've drawn. It's on the top. And then, so the first pipe we're going to run is not going to be this one, but I'm showing this is for the line going from the brake pipe to the control valve. And what I do is I'll use sometimes 30 thousandths. The brake pipe line coming to the pipe bracket is going to be 1.5 inches. So I used 30 thousandths wire, but then I took a piece of 40 thousandths and I soldered it on the end there to make a dust collector. I had a picture of it, but anyway, I trimmed that piece off, and then it makes it look like that little cup on the bottom of the pipe for a dust collector. And the first pipes you should hook up are the reservoir. So you basically run the across, and then to length. And if you drill your holes deep enough, when you drill these parts, you'll be able to trim this up fairly close, and you'll be able to slide the wire into the one hole deep enough that you'll be able to slide it into the other hole. And then you just super glue them into place. I didn't quite drill mine deep enough, so I had to keep trimming a little bit at a time until I finally got that pipe to fit. So, and there's the other one. Now, I told you they didn't like to put bends in the wire, but I had to do it because I had to make room for the brake rods when they go into place. So I wanted to keep that pipe up against the center sill. So I just put a bend in there. Nobody really has to know. Now the retainer. After we got the 2 reservoirs in, we're going to want to do that middle hole, which is the retainer. So what I did is, once again, I glued a little piece like this on the side of the car, right near the control valve. And then I mounted the retainer in there. And you can see that on the left-hand side of this picture. And I just ran it out like that while the glue set up. I just put a drop of super glue in each of the holes to hold it. And I waited for it to set up. Then what I'll do is put a 90-degree bend in the wire, and then trim it off short because the handles on the retainer valves are really short. All air exhausts through the retainer valve. And then here you can see I've got the first pipe lined up with the brake cylinder. And that, of course, would be the one on the right. Here you can kind of see I already put in the pipe from the brake pipe to the control valve. And you can kind of see that what looks like a white circle there. That's a dust collector that I had soldered onto the pipe earlier. So now we got to make the bleed rod. And I'll use little brass pieces for this. I drilled holes through it. They're about, they're 20 thousandths. I think I drilled these for 30. So I've got a little bit of slop on the bleed rods. But now here's kind of an interesting little fact about the bleed rod. If your bleed rod has AB brakes or the old K brakes, they'll put a 90-degree bend in the pipe or on the rod, 90-degree bend. If you've got ABD or ABDW, it's a pigtail. And I suppose they did that to show the carman would know by looking at the car that it's got more modern brakes equipped on it. So they knew to bring either ABD or ABDW portions to put on the car. Anyway, just a little fun fact about the bleed rods on those cars. So there it is with the bleed rod mounted in there. And what the other thing I did is on the control valve, I'll drill a hole in the top there. And then I'll just put like a little O-ring in there. And then I run the bleed rods through that. So when you pull on those rods, it'll bleed the car off. It'll empty the reservoirs. It'll do whatever you need to do as far as if you're cutting out the car. You've got to have a way to bleed the air off. Or if you're switching cars, you don't want the brakes applied, so they'll pull that rod to dump the air out of the brake cylinder, but it'll hold her in the. Anyway, it gets a little in depth on some of this. Here I am just pointing out the retainer that is now on the car. And then you can see here's the brake cylinder line running in there, and along with our bleed rods in place. So that's pretty much all the plumbing on the car. So now we need to get our brake levers in place. And there's another view. You can see the retainer valve on the one side and the bleed rods on the other. So now it's time to put the levers in place. So I put the first one in there and clamped it to those two pieces that I put there to basically support the lever, and little super glue once again. And then I just clamped it to there. I did the same thing on the other end. I glued it to the spot where the arm will pivot, the fulcrum. And then I glued that in place also. Another little thing is brake rods never push the brakes on. They always pull. So when you design these levers, you got to make it so that everything is pulling the brakes on, not pushing them on. If you pushed, the rods would bend and you wouldn't get the application that you want. So in all cases, and you can kind of tell from the way I set the brake cylinder up, when that comes out, the middle piece goes over to the other rod, and that makes the fulcrum for this one. And then the end will be pulling along with the end on the other one will be pulling also. So both levers will be pulling on the levers for the trucks. So what I do here to simulate the rod going from the lever to the truck is I'll drill a hole right near the center seal near the bolster. And what I'll do then is I'll bend the wire to fit in the lever, and then I'll bring it over here and bend it to fit in that hole. And there you see it there. And that simulates that it went to the control rod. So, or not the control rod, but the lever that goes on the truck to pull the brakes on there. And that's just kind of a simulation. I suppose there's somebody out there in the world who probably actually has working brakes, but I'm not going to that level here on this car. Then the next lever is from the middle of the lever to the middle of the other one. And that'll be as that cylinder moves out, it'll pull these levers. So the one going to the truck on the bottom of this white lever pulls the lever on the truck, and then the rod in the middle, of course, is pulling. And since the fulcrum is at the bottom, it causes a pulling action on that lever also. And then we just run a wire from that lever over to the same deal, drill a small hole near the bolster right in the center sill, and that'll simulate the look of that rod going to the brake lever on the trucks. So now we're going to make this fun little piece. I think you can buy these. I don't find them too hard to make, but I make a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch square. And what I'll do is you can kind of see I've drawn about a 1/2 circle on there. And first I'll round that edge, take the point off that diamond, and then I will cut it out and we'll make this piece. I drill 3 holes. The one is where it'll attach to the car. And then the 2 holes, because that piece from the railroads is open, and I'll just widen those holes a little bit, and that'll kind of make that clevis that goes from the handbrake, the chain goes around that to the brake cylinder. And that kind of simulates that pretty easily without getting into too much money. And so we mount that on there. You can see it there by the end of the car. I kind of took a file and kind of filed a groove in there so the chain has somewhere to lay. I've also placed some spacers in here with holes in them to guide the brake rod over to the brake cylinder. So it'll come down from the brake wheel, go around that clevis. And then what I'll do is I'll just mount a wire from the brake cylinder over here near the brake cylinder, because that's attached to the chain, but I'll mount it close there, go to the bolster, and that's where it ends. And then I'll have one that runs from that other side of the bolster over to the chain. And so it's separate pieces. You don't have to run one continuous piece through there. So there you can kind of see where I poked the holes through there. That's where the rod will run through. So then we take a little wire, put a little loop in it, and I mount my chain in there and then close the loop. And then what I will do is cut this off, and that'll go into that, as I mentioned earlier, that'll go into the handbrake portion, that little hole you drilled in there. You'll be able to cut this off short and stick it up in there, and it'll literally look like another link of the chain at the handbrake as such. And then you can see it goes around that clevis. And then I've got the rod going in there. That ends right there because there is a brace underneath that bolster that I wasn't going to drill through. And so we end it right there, and it just simulates that the rod passes through there. So there's the brake rod coming all the way over, and there's a little piece of chain that goes between that and the brake cylinder. And then when you tie your handbrake, that'll do that same pulley action that the cylinder gives, pushing on that rod. It'll pull that rod, which makes all the levers put the brakes on the car. So anyway, when we get done, we should have a complete underframe all built up, and then we'll work on the draft gear. Now, what I like to do with that draft gear, as I mentioned before, is I'm not a big fan of the spring in the middle. So what I do is I just keep sanding on it until it slides in there, not freely, but it's got a little bit of a drag to it. And I like doing it that way. And I'll put the couplers in there, and then the car acts like actual draft gear, because both ends will pull out as you're pulling a fully loaded train. They'll both pull out, but they'll stay out until you start to shove on the car, and then they both push in. And I like that action better than having the spring in there pushing that, as you uncouple from the car, it retracts back into the car. And I don't like that, because in the real world, they don't do that. If it's extended when you cut away, they stay extended. So that's how I like to work those center sills. So if you want to work on it, use some nice, real fine sandpaper, and just keep working on them. Sand them a little bit, slide them in there. But if they end up a little bit free, the other thing you can do is drill a hole through it and mount a little spring in there to slide along the sides. Anyway, I guess that's about where it ends. Next week, we are going to put couplers in place. We're going to put the rest of the ladders. We'll mount our trucks back in there, the doors, and we will finish this little project up. So, Jim, I guess back to you, and I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving tomorrow.
Well, David, thank you so very much. And like I say, if everybody will just wait until the end of these, then we'll have question time. David, thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
Now I'd like to introduce Gary Fish. Gary sent me an email earlier this week and notified me that George Massey has passed away. And I know Gary was a close friend of George's, and I've asked Gary to come on the show this evening and say a few words about George. So Gary, I will turn it over to you, sir, and thank you so much for letting me know.
No problem. Thanks a lot. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Unfortunately, I've been searching for a picture of George unsuccessfully. I asked some of the guys to send them. We were not successful. I will try to send one over for the next meeting. George was a wonderful, wonderful friend to have. He was always available. I remember when we were all starting the lockdown, we would share different things I found. I'd found your show. It's got to be over a year ago now that we did, and I told George about it. And the next time I look up, there he is on the show. He was coming on and asking for different things, participating. He's had a history in trains that was he was a trendsetter. He started off in Atlanta. We're all in Atlanta. He actually had a train store for many years up on the northeastern part of Atlanta, up on Beaver Crest Road, or Beaver Ruin, I should say. I was told he was actually, at that time, the largest Marclean dealer in the United States when he was participating. He had his European railroad. He loved participating in the European group for modules. He loved building the models that he was doing with you. I didn't realize he was doing it until one day we were at his house a few months back, and he was asking for help on a bridge, and it dawned on me that's the bridge you had been showing on the modeling that week. So I was like, oh, okay. I didn't realize he was participating. But he's been doing a lifelong railroader. He was just someone everyone enjoyed having around. He was always around. He loved to participate with the NMRA and was a regular. He was, when I first met and started going, he was handling the refreshments. I took that over from him 4 or 5 years ago, and I've been doing it since. But he he made sure that people always had something to reasonably priced to eat or drink. He was really good at supplying items and taught me how to handle it. Did a great job. And a couple of the guys today, when we were at our meeting, we were talking about it, discussed the fact that he started off, he was I guess a generalized railroader, and they said somewhere around 15, 20 years ago, all of a sudden he got very inspired about German railroader. He decided to become German. He had been Czechoslovakian before that, but he all of a sudden everyone was wearing all his German, some of his clothing, and he started building out a his German Swiss railroad. So he was very inspired about it, and his railroad with all his Märklin was beautiful. We loved visiting and working on it. He always had was thinking about 20 more items he wanted to add on and how he wanted to expand. And I finally said, George, let's get it running so you can enjoy it right now while we're expanding. And he was working on that the last time we were over, which I believe June was the last time that we were over to visit him. Delightful man. Can't think of a nicer person in the world. A good participant and a good friend to everybody. He as soon as we were coming over, he was if we had the meetings or round robin at my house, he would be the first one showing up. He'd be walking in with his DeWalt drill and impact driver, and he was ready to roll as soon as he got there. We're gonna miss him. We really will miss him. He was just a good friend to have around. I know I actually teased him. I think one of the shows somewhere in June, he was requesting sources for more models, German models. And when I went over to his house, we were over the next week. I looked and said, George, you've got over 100 of them sitting here unopened. I think you've got plenty of German models for right now. But he loved railroading. His other love was soccer. I think he was the first person I knew to have soccer. Of course, he always said that it was real football because he was really into into English soccer. I think it was Manchester United, if I remember correctly, was his team. And we used to have discussions whether it was real football, like American football, or he'd say, well, we use our feet. And I'd say, but you also use your chest and your head. So is it really football, chest ball, head ball that you do? So he was fun. He got such a kick out of that. So for those of you who knew him, he was a wonderful, delightful man. We'll miss him. I think if we all were half as nice as George was, the world would be a better place. So anyway, thank you for giving me a couple of minutes to share. I will try to get you a picture to put up as soon as I can. So thanks a lot, Jim.
Gary, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Well, now let's turn to Brian Schilling, who is building the ITLA model. Brian, welcome.
Good evening. I'm going to share screen here. Just a sec. All right. Bit of a dual screen. So.
Cannot hear you. I can't hear you, Brian.
Sorry, is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So last week I was kind of still carrying on a bit with the dry brushing and so forth. Just to finish that off, I just kind of showing the photo, I guess, on the right here, where I'd kind of dry brushed the stone coloring on there as well. I just wanted to show that, but this also starts to show some of the assembly stuff that for this kit. So for the most part, basically this is a kit that you're pretty much going to be gluing together with either a weld bond, or I use a yellow carpenter's glue. And you can use, if you can find applicators like this, where you can get a nice fine bead, that works well. But you know, putting a little glue on a piece of tape and then using applicators such as these, because you can get a fine little bead going, or work just as well. So the good thing with these is the intent is to build as many of these wall panels while they're still flat. And you can pretty much do most things on there. Just depends on your comfort level when you're going to assemble, or how tricky some of the corners might be. This kit's pretty straightforward. But basically take the window panels and press them into the holes and push them right down. And what I've done is I will, because this has 3 pieces that'll fit into that hole, I will actually go and I don't know if it's going to be very apparent here, but in these little returns on the sides, I try to do a little bit of painting here. It's not really probably showing up too well, but I take a little bit of the brick color down into that side, and then I kind of dry brush with the grout, and I go very lightly, just dragging it straight out, so you kind of get those horizontal kind of feel of the brick returning into the space. It's not perfect, but in the tiny visual that you will see, it actually has the perfect effect for that. So basically I take an applicator, I do a little bit of glue on the sides, a little bit along the bottom, and a little bit on the top at the back edge. I push the window down into there. And then once I kind of got it secured in place, I will flip it over. And if I need to, I'll dab a little glue on the back and push it right on until I've got a comfortable amount in there to hold it in place, let that dry. And then I will come back, and the sill piece and the header piece, they just slide down into the holes as well. The reason that it's done in this particular methodology is so that when you actually see those sills and headers will actually stay proud of the face and actually give you that nice, real crisp detail. I tend to paint the tops of the headers so that when you get that little piece sticking out from the wall, you're not getting that unfinished look. So that will be what I will tend to do on those. The same thing happens with the doors and the frames. And then once I have those in place and I'm kind of happy with that, I will, on the back, I will go and apply the glazing, and I have a picture of that. So again, painting up a lot of this stuff while it's flat, a lot of this detail stuff. This is with the yellow kit that I have not quite assembled as far right now. And then I also start doing up a lot of the detail pieces so that they're kind of ready to go, and then I can test fit and see how they start looking. So one of the things that I like to do with these is on something like these steps, I'll start to distress them a little bit before painting, so that you'll get a little bit of the wear on the step or little chinks out of the concrete and stuff like that. I'll do the same thing on the sills and the headers, so that gives a little bit of the detail. And then you can even start installing your ducts and stuff like that while it's flat if you so wish. But I'll locate those and leave them off until I've actually got the building together. So I'll come back to this in a second. So basically that's for the most part, all your pieces ready to go. Now the ladder and the duct are not actually attached here. I was just mocking them up so that you could see what they look like. But I tried to do as much of the other stuff before I start putting together. So for me, it's a very simple process, and a lot of people go through different things of how they use fancy clips and stuff like that in order to square corners and everything. I typically, on buildings like these ones, I'll take the roof, and that's what you're kind of seeing down in the bottom here. That's the actual roof panel, and that will keep that building square. Okay, the easiest, simplest thing if you've got nothing else type thing. Because these are kind of tongue and groove and fitting together, that it will help considerably on stuff like this. But that's one way that you're going to keep a corner nice and clean for that. And then I'll use the elastics on there. Now I don't assemble all four corners at once, but I will, in something like this, put them together because it helps hold the building together and keep that square. So otherwise you can get into using different types of clamps and so forth in order to square those corners. Okay. So that's the back side of what it looks like. So there's the skinny little vertical piece there. Those are part of the kit. And I start figuring out on the first corner how high I want that to be so that I can actually have it so that the roof will sit at what I consider the correct height, because those will be in all four corners. And then once I got that figured out, then I will follow suit with all the remaining quarters. So that's the back. You can also see here where I've just taken the glazing and I've just attached in big pieces type thing. I'm not cutting and going very fancy here. Attaching that, I typically just use something like this. I find that works just fine. I'm not an expert on what particular glue in that case to use, but this has always worked well for me. So as you can see also at the back, you can see a little bit of glue along edges and stuff like that where these were put in. But other than that, it's pretty flat. I don't big globs on the back or anything. I don't do stuff like that because then it allows me to get the glazing to sit nice and flush to the backside of those windows and doors. So on the fronts, once I actually get those corners together, I'll start taking the panels that cover the corners and start working on those. Now I've painted them for the most part while they're flat, but once I get them on, I will put on the first one so it's flush with the return wall. I will get it painted on the inside edge so that when you see the side corner, you're not seeing a black of the laser cut, but I sand that down to get rid of the black, and then I paint up that edge just so that it's a little nicer. On the stone, not as big a deal. And then I take the other one and then I cover that over and I try to align that as perfectly as I can on the corner. If you do, however, have some gaps on there, then you can use anything such as like a polyfilla or whatever it is that you feel. I've used glue at times too, to fill that up. And then when I touch up paint, basically that seam is almost perfect. Okay. So at this point, just going to go back to this. So in the kit, there are some paper decals that have come along with it. And I'm not fancy on my decal work either. I kind of call myself a guerrilla modeler. I'm not looking for, you know, the longest, most elaborate way to do it. I'm looking for cheap and easy and get it done. But obviously I want it to look good too. And the results I've done, for the most part, I think have been very successful, or they've been a learning experience. So what I do with these decals is I will take a pencil on the backside of the page, and you can just see kind of the decal kind of highlighting through here. And I will just outline the area where that decal is. Then what I do is I just take a piece of sandpaper, and I will hold the decal so it stays flat, and I will just circular sand on the backside of that till I get that paper as thin as I can without it starting to tear or and so forth. The reason I'm doing that is so that when I actually glue this decal on, it's not big and globby and thick. It sits very nicely. I will also turn over. So at the bottom here, we ship everywhere. I've also sanded the top because I want this sign to be very faded and so forth. Once I do that, then I X-Acto it out to the size that I need. And basically I lay it with the front side down, and I use a glue stick. I hold the one end, I go away from me. I go the other end, and I go away from me until I've got a nice even coat on the back of it with a glue stick. Then I carefully position it on in the location I want. And if it's on an area where it is on a brick surface or whatever, where you've got some of that, if you take a nice smooth edge, and if you want to take a little bit of paper on top of it or whatever, if you start burnishing that, it will actually start kind of bringing that brick pattern through it, and it'll actually look like the sign's faded into the wall to some degree. So that's a quick and simple as what I do with those. If the signs are to be newer or brand new type thing, obviously you don't want to be doing too much of the burnishing. You don't want to be doing anything on the fronts, and then, you know, keep it as clean as possible, and then it'll look good. So right now, this sign kind of stands out because I have not done anything to weathering down that the stucco surface. I'll be getting to that, so I'm trying to fade that in a little bit when I get that. But the sign itself will already have some distress to it, which is my intention. So for the painting and so forth, if you'll notice on a lot of things, I'm not a very clean painter when it comes to some of this stuff. In fact, it actually looks downright atrocious in some cases, and I can see people going, "What the heck is this guy doing?" That's intentional. So if you look at that garage door, I want that garage door to look weathered up. I don't have to do much with this. If I went and got that so it was looking pristine, now I got to do more work on the back end in order to kind of bring it back down. The stucco surface, yeah, it's probably a little cleaner. It actually looks cleaner there than it does in front of me. So, you know, I'll be using more the kind of the pen pastels or chalks or something like that at the end. But when it comes to like the wooden doors and the stones and the bricks and all that, I'm trying not to have to do a huge amount of that work at the end if possible. So that basically covers what I intend to talk to tonight. So next steps for me at this point will be basically just the finishing of doing the assembly of the four sides, putting the roof on, and then painting up the back side of where the roof goes to the parapet, and then start doing the detail work. So for instance, I've already done up the chimney. And I've also put a kind of a black layer at the bottom because that's all going to be, slopped with tar and stuff with that, and to go up the sides. So I already started doing some of that work up front so that it's already there. I'll have to attach still a couple things, and then to me, it'll be pretty close to being done with a little bit of weathering left to do. So that's all I have. I guess later, if there's any questions. Back to you.
Brian, it's a beautiful model. You're doing a great job. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Stop. There we go.
Well, now I'd like to turn to Jim Murphy for his wrap up of the LaBelle woodworking model of the business car. Jim, welcome.
Well, nice to be here. And it has been a fun build period. And hopefully we shall move along to our final. As you approach the end of a modeling project, that's when the fun really begins. And I do mean downright fun. I've had an awful lot of excitement with this build. And I'd like to share the final stages of it. And hopefully you can see where we left off last time. We're looking at all throughout this build, I've been very careful to make sure that all the basic components can be separated so that we can continue on with detailing as we go along each step. We built the roof separately, the underbody, the car body itself, along with the LED wiring, which we discussed last week, the schematic for that. I want to thank everybody for their interest and response for that. So we're down to a bare floor, a place to hide the electronics, and a basic car body. So we're going to take it a step beyond. We're trying to we left off with this stage, but it's a great model. It's all lit up, but there's nothing inside. And if we're going to have the BSLRR executive car, we definitely need to make luxury accommodations for our executives, and more importantly, for their customers up and down the line. Start with carpeting. It's the thing I always do in remodeling. All-purpose glue sticks. Liberally coat your car with the inside of your car. That's why everything has to be flat, smooth, sanded. Even the truck screws have had to be ground down slightly to get a smooth inside surface. The beauty of a copier, go search the internet and came up with a nice period appropriate Persian carpet, which were real popular, along with some other goodies that I could copy of. Bear in mind, anytime you put anything on a thin cardstock and are going to add it to your model, use a Sharpie or a paint marker of some sort, cover up the cut edges because they have a way of coming up and showing when you least want them to. This is what we're going to be doing. We're going to do the interior furniture, build little mini scenes in here. This is one piece of carpeting from the internet, and then the long runner that goes to the body of the car. Managed to find some round spheres, which in HO scale are about 12 inches across, and they are going to become our gas lights. Again, plint gas is used or pinched gas is used to light these, and they are very bright white. Unfortunately, a little rectangular doesn't spread the light very well. So our trick here is to take those glass or acrylic beads and then just a drop of ACC cement to the bottom of each LED, and that basically builds us a light fixture. searching the internet, I found some of these these round spheres were pretty popular back in the day for gaslight features. So I've got the lights strung from the top of the roof. So drop of ACC, put a little flat spot on the bulb, and they pop right in there. Now, what happens is, of course, the light will reflect all through this gazing ball and go up into the roof, where we don't want it. So I start by applying a little bit of brass colored paint to the bottom. Does two things. One's that helps glue the bulbs in place so they don't fall off. Also provides a reflector, which gives it a little yellowish cast because it's a brass reflector. That's like a 5/0 brush and a little patience, and even an HO scale isn't too bad. And I only want to paint half of the fixture so it acts as a reflector. Then I'm going to start adding some details to the inside. This is a bit of a scattergun approach. And what I've done is I've made up a bunch of figures. Some of these are 3D printed. Some of these are just kit bashed from an old kit. The bottles are all 3D printed. So this is where you get out your 5/0 brush and some patience, and you just start painting. So we've got a suite for the owner, a small kitchen setup, because I don't have much deep room or depth of field. I can cheat a little bit so I can have my waiter working in the kitchen when the kitchen is only a photograph attached to the rear wall, give you a little more feeling of depth of field. As we get closer and closer, we do a little more detail. These are 3D printed dining room set. Reminds me of when I was a kid. An office with a kerosene lamp. Remember, we only have gas to light the overhead lights, but for reading lights, we have kerosene, and for heating the car, we have coal. I'm still looking for a pinched gas heater. I think they existed in the 1900s. A little bit larger picture as we start to expand into the other room. We're going to have an observation area, the dining room complete with flower centerpieces, which were taken down when your train was in motion, and the room set up and dividers there during the car. It's a very short car, so you don't have room for very much. Looking at it from the outside, you can see that this is what the overhead lights look like with their homemade reflectors. So they're all pointing downwards. Again, just the two wires that come up through the hallway to light the LEDs, and an observation section with a conversation going on. And hopefully that's a client and the business manager who is working to drum up even more business for his railroad. Looking at it from the top, we have an observation section, dining room with flowers, a restroom, a small office set up to take any orders that might be generated, a place for the business manager to sleep while he's traveling up and down the railroad, generating more business, and a bar for entertainment purposes only. For any of those that might have been in marketing in the 60s, like I was, that's a necessary item for marketing. Here's a side view, again, showing the overhead lights and our waiter and kitchen attendant preparing us a snack and some food to go with our conversation. A top view here of the dining area. And again, the lights, if you paint them a flat black after they're all installed, it really focuses the light all down into the body of the car and doesn't distract by shining back in your eyes. It also keeps it from shining into the clear story. Here's our waiter ready to serve it all up. You've got a hot water urn ready to go for coffee and tea, whatever you have there, and a little bit more of the underbody detail, which we already talked about. A bigger view of it all with showing the various sections in it, how it's all in it. You'll notice there's almost no weathering on this car yet. The varnish was just that. Business car was always kept immaculately clean, no rust, freshly painted, and everything always kept clean. Good clean lines. And here with the, you can see the lights are working. There's pickup from the tracks here on these very fine wires, barely noticeable, taking power up from the tracks up to the marker lights. And because we have put reflectors on the LEDs, you don't get that uncomfortable glow from the clear story. It looks like it ought to. Outside view of with a little bit of lighting, you can catch the what's going on at the bar, or a shot inside the dining room with the roof off. A little bit better picture here with the roof in action. And side view here, looking at the office area, dining room, and a bit more of the underbody. And that brings us to our conclusion. The most fun of this whole project has been just doing the underbody. What's not shown, and I didn't dare show you, is all the work that was spent on the inside of that car with a 5/0 sable and various colored paints and lots of patience. So that part is, all it takes is just a lot of effort and time, and you have a lot of fun with it. Are there any questions about this particular one or the series itself?
Well, Jim, we'll come back for questions at the end here. But I want to thank you so very much for doing a fantastic job on this build. You built a beautiful car, both inside and out, and I congratulate you. Thank you so much for doing it and showing it to everybody.
Well, thank you. It was a lot of fun.
Well, now I'd like to turn to Chris Corse, who is our moderator for the My Build. Chris, welcome.
Thanks, Jim. All right, here we go. All right, My Build featuring you. Paul Schenk, are you up? Did you manage to get up? Yeah, we haven't seen Paul, so we're just wondering if maybe he did show up. But from the email I saw, he was asked to send in a bunch of pictures, and oh my gosh, he did. Take a look there. Look at that bridge. That thing is fantastic. Look at the height on that. Now it looks like it's all individual wood pieces too. That looks pretty sharp. All right. Next we have a waterfront scene and a winter scene, and both are very nicely done. And then let's see, we've got a little bit more. Got a factory up at the top there, and it looks like more of his layout down on the right there. Next up, we have Rich Wolfhanger. Rich, you up? I know I saw you earlier.
Yes, I am.
All right.
The very top picture on the left side is world-known modeler Chuck Doan. He designed that. It's not a kit. What I built is not a kit, but he designed that building, and I asked permission if I could copy it, a facsimile of it, for a tribute model to two world-known modelers that passed away on the railroad line forums. and they were Chester Fesmeyer. Maybe some of you have met him at Springfield shows. And Frederick Testard from France. Frederick was a math teacher and an author. So I decided to put both of those models on one tribute. The model that shows my diorama down below Chuck's model is the Red Oak Garage. And I wanted to make a tow truck like he did, similar, and I used a Russian Roco ZIS-5 truck model and modified it. And the modification I made to that was the winch on the back is totally made from wood, not styrene. It was a booger to do, but I did it. And the little red shed building was Frederick Testard's favorite model that he built for a diorama for a Sweden modeler named Troels Kirk. And it's called the Dog House. I didn't show the other side of it. The wall below it is a metal wall I bought from Railroad Kits, fine scale miniature detail. And the building over to the right side is Foss Scale Models did a similar structure called the Ideal Hosiery. Well, what I did was I thinned down the width of it and modified the front of it. The front of it had a door along with the glass. And then I put my door on the side of the building on the far around the corner. And I made that into a pawn shop because Frederick Testard built a model for Troels Kirk, the guy I mentioned in Sweden, which included the red building, on a diorama called Dave's Corner. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that, but I made it into a pawn shop, and I messaged Troels Kirk and asked him if I could downsize a painting that he painted. He's an artist too, that he painted for Frederick, of Frederick's snow shed on Frederick's layout. So I downsized that painting and put it in the front window of the pawn shop like someone pawned it. I thought that was kind of neat. But the stake truck in front is a Jordan model. You had other pictures of this?
Yep.
No.
Well, actually, I just have what you sent me.
Oh, I didn't send you any more of the diorama one?
I don't think so. Here's some.
Two others.
Yep.
Okay, I did the backside of the Red Oak Garage because Chuck never built that on his model. He built his model for a wall plaque for his father. And Chuck's model, I forgot to mention, is in O scale. And this is HO. So I built this little walkway to the back here to walk by the dog house. It's more or less a tool shed out back.
All right. I'm gonna go back to the other one here.
Okay, this is another model that I built for a challenge on the railroad line. These challenges lasted 3 months. Now this building looks rather daunting. I've never built, this is the first structure I ever built that was this large. And some of the guys that had fine scale miniature kits laughed at me because they said I never could build this in 3 months. Well, I steered those people wrong. But anyway, the picture to the upper left corner is an ad from Model Railroader that showed the kit that fine scale miniature George Celios, the manufacturer of fine scale miniatures, sold as his kit. I wanted to make a building similar because I can never find one on the secondary market. They were always too expensive. And I do most of the structures I scratch build are from magazine ads, photos that I find on the internet. And I try to search for complete sides all the way around the building so I could determine the heights, the widths, but sometimes that never works out. So one of the railroad line members, Carl Osolinsky, told me, if you ever want to measure windows, you know the size of windows and you know the size of buildings in real life. So spread out your windows on a sketch that you draw and place them where you want them. And if the first story doesn't look right, keep moving around until you get it right. And so then I did, and then I buy all my materials myself because I don't have a kit to build this. I buy my aged clapboard siding, the same siding that George uses in his kits from Northeastern or Dr. Ben. I buy Grant Line windows to put in this. I buy fine scale miniature details for the doors and windows. The shingles, well, I made that end building on this. Can you see my cursor moving around?
No.
All right, so the little building over the wharf has slate shingles on from Tiki. I built that building different than the kit building because I didn't really like the way the kit building looked. They had a what, the crane thing there was, and part of it was up on that roof, and I didn't like the way they did that, so I built this building another way. And I don't know, I just I enjoyed the looks of this building so much that I had to have one.
You did a heck of a job on it, that's for sure.
I appreciate that.
All right.
I really want to thank you guys for having me on here, and I also want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, thanks. And thanks for coming on, and happy Thanksgiving to you too as well, Rich.
Listen, I have 15 more of these dioramas. Do you want me to send some more?
Sure. I think our next show is December 22nd.
That's my birthday.
Oh, well, happy birthday.
Thank you.
So, yeah, we'll be ready for it. All
Thank
right.
you very much.
All right. Next up, we have Martin.
Oh, gosh. Now I have to remember what these are. You put me on the spot now. Well, I sent these to you a month and a half ago, so it's, you know,
Yeah.
short-term memory went out the window. Let's see. The little station's actually a Motrak kit that I picked up back in July, June, whatever, and bought just because they looked like a lot of fun and it's something I could do, and also use it as a review in my magazine. So, and I did not bother to put it. It comes set up to go up on like on stilts on like a pier for like a transfer station of some sort. But I kind of liked it just on level ground. I thought it was good to just stop right there and leave it alone and leave it as a level ground station. And the lunch shack, that's a Berkshire Valley kit. Which is really, as you might think, even in O scale, it's very small. So, you know, if you've got big fat fingers, it's not for you. But interesting, fun thing about that were the hinges to put those doors, the front door up. Those are actually like laser cut. It's not paper, it's not wood. I'm not sure what it was, but you have to bend it, glue it, and what really holds it there are those 3 points and that piece of chain. It's, you know, again, fat fingers get in the way. The real challenge of putting that together, whether actually putting the stools together, that's several pieces of laser cut wood. But they look nice when you're done, if you're patient with it. It was a fun little build. It's doesn't come with much of an interior, so it's really ripe for customizing as to whatever you'd want to do with it. It's but a fun little small structure. Is there more or not?
Oh, yes, there are more.
Oh, gosh. Okay. Oh, gosh. A truly ancient hopper car. That was a Railcraft car. I got it with 3 IMP hopper cars that were brass, but this one is actually tin-plated steel. When I got it, it had no details of any kind on it. It was merely a shell. So everything, I added all the brake stuff at the one end, the ladders, the steps, everything. Even the hatches on the bottom, they weren't there. So, but you can take a 50, 60-year-old tin-plated steel car, add a handful of details, throw a coat of paint on it, throw a set of decals from, I think those were Tishi, and you can make a pretty acceptable car out of that. In spite of its ancient origins. The IMP cars were as rough, if not worse. One had about a half a pound of lead in it, which stayed in it. The little pickle car was something I just wanted to do for fun. As far as I know, there were no 3 tub cars. I think as far as I know from all the books and articles, there are only 4 tub cars. But I wanted a smaller car to park in front of my Lawther's Perfect Pickles building on my layout. So I just scratch built this car almost entirely. The tubs, the top and bottom of the tubs were actually started off as laser cut parts from French Creek. And when I tried to wrap the wrapping around them, that all fell into many pieces. So those are board by board instead. I just gave up trying to bend what was supplied, and I just went with individual boards. The rest of it's all my stuff. Same with all the underbody, the car. The rest of it's just wood out of my shop and parts out of my parts bins. And I'm actually wrapping up a second one of these because someone saw this car and said, "Oh, can you make me one? Can you make me one? Can you make me one?" Oh God. And I said, well, if I must. But he wanted a different sign on it, and he sent me the artwork for it. So I thought, well, okay. Yeah, one of the rare instances where I broke down and actually built something for somebody else. I don't advise making a habit of that to anybody. It sounds like a great idea to be a custom builder, but as soon as you do, you're no longer working for you. And the fun starts to dissipate rapidly. I guess I'm done. Unless there's more.
Nope, that's it.
Super. Thank you.
All right. Next up is William Zadnik. If I recall, William could not be with us tonight. I'll just do a shout out. William, are you here? Okay. All right. So I'll go ahead and take care of his slides for him. This is all cardstock. So he's done some neat stuff. I mean, that's some pretty good detail with cardstock there. He's even got the insides. Looks like he even did the interior, but looks like that's a structure. I can't read it. Let me see if I can move I've got to move the there we go. All right. Yeah, I had to move the individual thumbnails out of the way. Okay, so it cut the core out of 3 millimeters thick cardstock using a laser for the inside and mirror the PDF. So yeah, that's did quite a bit of work to get that done. And did up the inside or the roofing. And let's see what else we have here. That looks like he really put some effort into it. And then there, once again, are the Oriental rugs, second time this evening. And as you can see, he's done some, he's adding the Oriental rugs to cars. And it looks like he's been messing a little bit into 3D printing. Trying to see how that works. All right, Chris Blackmore, you up?
And I'll let you runner if you want to go on to the next
Sure.
slide here.
Yep.
Since I haven't really accomplished anything at the modeling bench for the past month, I thought I'd dig out an old model and kind of do something a little bit different. So as we move forward here, I'm going to kind of show you some of the tricks I use when I construct a diorama. This shows the scratch-built styrene ore chutes. This model is, if you want to go to the next screen,
Sure.
is of the Model Foundry Silverado mine. Now, the Model Foundry kit is by CC Crow. He did do a special run with Caboose Hobbies where basically you could buy the plans and that was just inside a Ziploc baggie. And so that's what I ended up with, a no frills kit, and that's what I started with. So this is entirely scratch built board by board. The thing that I wanted to kind of bring out in this is that a lot of people just go for straight flats on dioramas or whatever. And if you add a little bit of vertical dimensions to your dioramas, it'll get a little bit more dramatic, and just a little bit of height or depth can change things. Here you can see that I have 3 basic levels established. And in this picture, I'm actually setting up the heights to make sure of clearances for the ore bin chutes and the main ore bin, which is in the next slide. Or excuse me. Now here you can see the main ore bin in front here. I started out doing all of my ground cover and everything on the back side of the diorama to make sure that my colors, my textures, and everything was going to work for what I was trying to reproduce. Also, another thing that I can bring out when you're doing board by board, an advantage over clapboard sliding, or excuse me, scribe siding, is if you look on the shaft house, which is the 3rd building or the building farthest away from you in the 2nd or upper story there, you can see how different widths of boards as well as thicknesses of boards can add some additional texture to your models. It's a very subtle type thing, but it does come through. And if we go to the next slide, here I have the main ore bin in place. Again, everything, all the chutes and everything have been scratch built. There you can see the HO scale chutes in place that we saw in the first. This shows really the first layer of details being added to the ground cover and what I've got going. And if we go to the next slide here, this shows the second layer of ground cover being added. And here you can see that the white ground cover has been added not only to the ground, but to the wood in the back there, the cribbing, because I use different widths of cribbing, the ground cover sticks on that. I also used the ground cover to act as a path for the eye to follow. So here in this particular case, I wanted to focus and bring the attention to those scratch-built doors. And specifically, I just kind of went for the door handles for lack of a better focal point. So here I used the light-colored pathway leading up to the doors. I then used the pallets and the crushed barrel in the foreground, which are pointing to the doors. I then use the bright colored barrel back at the base of that support beam coming down, and the bright colored barrel brings your attention to that support beam. That support beam is again pointing towards the doors. And then I have that bright barrel, then the shade, which is a medium value color, and then the oil tank, which is a dark value color. And then you wrap around and you get the reverse with the two pallets going down. And that forms a triangle around those doors, which also kind of forces your eye to those doors. My point here is that if you want to take your viewers and kind of focus them on little tidbits of your build where you have really gone to some extreme to build something, like these doors have different thicknesses, the door handles, all of it are scratch built, then the viewer's mind carries that kind of detail through to the rest of your layout or your other structures. And if we go to the next slide, again, roofs are always important. And so here you want to add as much detail as you can to the roofs that is appropriate. In this particular case, this is the top of the shaft house. I've got multiple different angles in this structure, along with various colors and textures to make it interesting to the eye and a little bit of eye candy for the viewer. And then finally, if we go to the next slide, don't forget that you can use cables, wires, and other basic ground forms to help form the path for the viewer's eye to follow. Of course, always colors are the main thing that most people utilize, and certainly make use of values and colors to guide your viewer through your scenes. And then next slide. Thing that I wanted to finally point out and to help everybody remember is that when people step in and look at your models, remember this is the first type of view that most people see. And you're looking at those roofs and you're looking down and you're seeing the pathways and the different colors. And that is what traps your eye immediately. And so working from that, you can then guide your viewer through your scene as you want them to review your modeling efforts. And with that, I'm complete.
All right. Oh, I thought there was more to this one. All right, I guess that's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I thought actually, I guess you were the last one. So thanks for participating, everyone, and shared quite a bit of some interesting stuff there. So yeah, that was a lot for tonight, but we managed to make it through. So thanks everybody for participating, and happy Thanksgiving to all Americans, and belated to the Canadians. So I'll turn it back over to you, Jim.
Chris, thanks for doing a great job. You showed some beautiful models. I mean, just fantastic workmanship. Thank you so much for everybody that shared with us tonight. We really do appreciate your help. I just got a photo that Gary Fish had sent me of George Massey. And Ken, if you can put it up on the screen for me. This is George, and he will be missed by an awful lot of people. He was really something to be around, and a great modeler. Gary, thanks again for sharing some information about George with us. Now I'd like to open this up for some questions from anybody about any of the build-alongs or anything that's been done so far tonight.
Well, I have a question for Greg. I'm actually planning for my model instead of using the posts that came with the model is using either toothpicks or bamboo skewers. Which would you say would be a more appropriate size?
I think the bamboo skewers would work better. Toothpicks, I think, would just look a little too spindly for holding up a roof like that.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's Larry McDonald here. I have a question for Greg. That angle gauge, is that what you call it? You referred to it as an angle gauge?
Uh-huh.
Where did you get that?
I was afraid you were going to ask. I don't know. I've had that half my life. And I used to race, and I got lots of tools back then, and I'm sure it's just something I acquired along the way. But you should be able to find one, at tool suppliers or maybe even Amazon or something.
That's some pretty good detailed cardstock there.
Yeah, it was interesting because, rather than using a protractor or something like that to try to measure an angle.
Yeah, I use that angle gauge
You did
quite
the
often.
interior.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Those gauges were made originally by L.S. Starrett Company in Massachusetts, and I have seen similar ones in Home Depot and Lowe's back in the tool section, usually under glass somewhere. They're not frightfully expensive. They've gotten a little more over the years, but they should still be available at the big box tool stores.
Well, thank you.
I use one on almost every model I build. So if you go out and spend the money on one, it's a good investment.
I got to say, the one I have couldn't have been too expensive back when I got it, because I was paycheck to paycheck back then. When you're racing, you don't have much leftover money for anything. But it has lasted, a good 40 years. So, it's worth the investment, I guess.
Hey, Craig, for the I guess the decking, I have not received I guess my extra decking because I don't know if I lost it or my kit didn't come with the decking.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's in the mail.
It probably went to Clark.
But what's I'm thinking of using like a temporary
No, it went to Clark's neighbor. You want to go to the next?
Oh, went to Clark's neighbor. All right.
Yeah, if
But,
you wanted to
what's-
substitute something, you can just find some scribe siding. That's basically what it is.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I actually have some balsa wood. I was going to use that and scribe my own lines.
Be careful with that balsa wood. It's so fragile. If you're scribing along the grain, it's so easy to cut it. I would either try to find a piece of regular basswood scribe siding. A lot of hobby shops and stuff carry that, even non-model railroading hobby shops. Or reach out to Jeff and tell him you need that piece again.
Yeah. Well, he was on when I first got it. He said he was going to send it on. I think it was about 3 weeks ago or something like that. But I guess the kit itself came, very fast and all that. But I guess the envelope must be slower getting here.
Well, I've got a whole bunch of scribe siding downstairs. If you haven't gotten it by next week, I'll send you a piece.
All right, thank you.
Are there any other questions?
I don't have a question, but I'd like to mention to Bud in Pittsburgh that I was friends with your friend that passed away, Don Reed.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, I miss Don terribly.
He was a very good modeler.
Yes, he was.
And I have some pictures I saved on my computer that show you and him at your club.
Oh, gosh. That's a few years ago.
Is that Don Reed from Microscale?
No,
No.
Oh,
just the same name.
Are there any other questions? Well, if not, thank you so much for coming this evening. I hope you've really enjoyed it. Most importantly, I hope you've learned something. Please join us again next Wednesday. We've got a great show for you. And most of all, have a great Thanksgiving this year, and many more happy ones to come. So that's it for our show this evening. And with Clark Kooning not being able to be with us tonight because of some minor illness that he seems to have acquired, Ed Cady is back this evening and has volunteered to handle a short after show for us. So Ed, I will turn it over to you, sir. And again,
All
thank
right.
everybody for coming.
Yes, all right. So, well, happy Thanksgiving to everyone who's going to wander off. And for those who are planning on staying, I would say unmute yourselves when you want to talk, but please mute yourselves back when you are not talking. It also was suggested that we all be on our best behaviors while we're still on YouTube. However, you know, I'm too tired to be on my best behavior, so you're only going to get good behavior.
Well, I want to mention something to Brian. When I was watching the way you put the roof supports in that kit, I said to myself, I should have waited because I just put those in. I'm building that as well. And I just put them in this afternoon and I put them in wrong. I put them in going across the wall instead of up in the corner. And it occurred to me, you know, up in the corner would have been just as good and would have been a lot simpler to get them all even.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to kill either way as long
Oh,
as
no,
they're all
I
the
already
same
got
level.
I already got the roof glued in and it's level. It was just more work than what you did. So.
Yeah, I just find that the reason what I thought you were going to say is you put them in and you put them starting at the bottom and they're a lot shorter than you thought they were going to be, because that is one of the things that I was going to just stick them at the bottom and then it's like, let's just do a test fit. That roof looks way too low. So yeah, I kind
No,
of
I did glance
test.
at the instructions where Nick said something about 3/8 down from the top. So I set my depth gauge to 3/8 inch and put one in and said, yeah, that looks about right. And so I glued it in, but I've got to do the depth gauge on both ends since I'm gluing it horizontally. And then I had to do that ×4.
Yeah.
And as soon as I saw yours, I said, boy, that's easier.
It's
Live and learn.
it's funny. I kind of look at the instructions and then I kind of look how I want to build it. But no, his instructions are generally been pretty good on things that I've had from him, so that he's tried to think it through as fairly well, so that, you know, even if you're fairly experienced or not very experienced, they've been generally pretty straightforward to follow, and that can't be said for all kits.
No, the engineer in there is stellar.
Yeah.
The thing that I'm doing that's making this one a little challenging, I'm not using any paint on it. I'm doing all of the coloring with those Copic markers because they work so well on MDF. The problem is they work not as well on the plywood. So I'm having to do some finagling because of that. But so far, I only have a minuscule amount of paint on the whole thing.
Yeah, I don't, I hate telling people how to do things the way they should or shouldn't type thing, because I kind of find that I kind of like the discovery sometimes. But you know, everybody kind of, once they've done a few kits or a few models, they have their tried and true practices. But it's always good for them, myself included, obviously, to kind of see things like what we've seen tonight, where it's just like, hey, that's a
Absolutely.
good idea, and you know. But I know I've seen people do certain techniques, and okay, well, I got to get some of whatever that is, and then it's just like I start trying to, it's like, yeah, it's a really good technique if you've got it mastered, but it's not the technique I like doing, so it's just a frustration level at that point. But you have to be open to exploring those to kind of hit those things, because there's been things where I would have done it one way at one time, and then now I've got other things in the tool case, so to speak, to be able to do different things in different places. So in fact,
Yeah.
this
Well, that was
spraying the brick with the red oxide paint, I was like, are you crazy? That's never going to tone down. And it's just like, nope, it does. It actually works quite nicely.
Yeah, and that's where you fall back on past experience. You know, you may not have done it for a year or two, but you know, I know in the past I've used red oxide and somehow I made it come out looking like good brick. And sometimes it's rediscovering what you did sometime earlier, but aren't quite sure how you did it, but you like the way it came out.
Yeah. Well, I've resorted to a practice of, I use, and this goes all the way back to architecture and university kind of days when we used to sketch everything. And we used to have these hard covered sketchbooks. You know, they're bound sketchbooks. So this isn't stuff that, you know, you're necessarily just scraps of paper type thing. This is stuff where you're gonna take notes and you're gonna do something here, and something that you can kind of find later and come back to. And you know, even to the point where it's just like, okay, I need certain colors of paint. I'll paint them in this sketchbook on a page with some information about them, what I might have used them for, whatever, where did I find it? Because that paint might dry out and I got to go get some more, or that paint's gone. And when I go to the store, I want to be able to compare paints. So now I can take my sketchbook with me and there's a color palette, so to speak, or there's these things where it's just notes on how to do some of these processes. Because there was a gentleman that who lives up here, and he does detail piece painting, and it's amazing what he does. But it's just like there certain things that he does, there's a very set process in order to get the effect. So I've written out that process, and yes, it works, but I won't remember that process unless I have that kind of recipe to go back to, so to speak.
Oh yeah, I've got a few scraps of paper downstairs with procedures for layering colors to get a kind of rust color that I like. And if I'm going to use those paints to go for that effect, I have to look at the sheet of paper to remind myself how to do it.
I just find sheets of paper, and this is not a shot to anybody, but a sheet of paper will get lost, whereas my little notebook, a lot harder to lose. And I tend to take it with me. So I have like 2 or 3 sketchbooks. One sketchbook is when I'm coming up for ideas of buildings or scenes or whatever, I'm starting to sketch it out in there. And I'll, you know, that's what that's for. But the other one is strictly, and it's a slightly smaller version type thing, but it's kind of a recipe book, so to speak, for modeling. And I don't have everything in there, but I'm kind of like, okay, when I've discovered something, or I've discovered a process, or a certain set of things that I want to use to get us something, I kind of write down that little recipe, and that way I've kind of got that to go back to, and it's handy versus it's filed away in a drawer somewhere. So that might be my tip to anybody who's having struggles with those types of things. Like there's been fantastic modelers here, and I don't know what everybody's got as their go-to as to how to do these things, or they just do it often enough that they don't need to remember things. But I find that I don't have that recall anymore.
Well, that's the beauty of nowadays having a camera in every phone is I take pictures as I go, more to refer back to how I did something in the past if I want to replicate it.
Yep, fair enough. Fair enough.
I have a question for Ted Becker. I see him working on his roundhouse, Ted. I wonder if you can hold it up over and show the very front where I know you're putting the track in. And I guess whatever you added in front, the very front, can you show that? Maybe a little closer.
All right.
What'd
Yeah,
you
this
put at the
is
very front there?
Walther's Roundhouse, and what John is talking about is I have this on I got a layer of either cork or foam core on top of the blue foam. So what I did was to position the roundhouse relative to the turntable is I put this lip of gator board, which is a lot denser, and this curve fits right up against the rim of the Walther's turntable. And then if you can see these little triangular cutouts, there are matching triangles glued to the top of the layout, so that keys the roundhouse in place relative to the turntable. And I've been adding the track and the wiring, and you can see the wires. And what I discovered is at the end of the little groove for the rail is I took a small drill bit, I forget what size, 32nd of an inch, 30,000, something like that. And I drilled like at a 45-degree angle. And then I've been pre-soldering the wires to the end. And I pay attention to which side of the rail I solder the wire so it's not on the flangeway side. And that just slips into the hole. And that's what I've been doing well this evening. Did that cover what you wanted to see, John?
Yeah, I wanted to see what, I wanted to see what the very front looked like, how you had the rails sticking out, and that gator board, is that what you called it?
Yeah, gator board. I glued it with this polyurethane glue. This is the same kind of chemistry as the original Gorilla Glue.
Yeah.
That seemed to be the best. And then what I'm going to do is on the rails here is I'm going to slide flex track ties on there so there's ties in that space.
Yeah.
And that'll hold that engage.
Yeah. So yeah, looks good.
And I got another one of these to do. It's the bigger Walther's roundhouse, because I'm going to have 12 roundhouse stalls in total. The 6 of the smaller roundhouse, and then 6 of the what Walther's calls their modern roundhouse.
Yeah, looks good. Thanks.
There's another important question that is sort of tradition that is on the after show is what's for dinner, Larry? No, I'm asking Larry, not you, Ted. You're muted.
Are we still on our best behavior?
I'm only on good behavior. That's all I have the energy for tonight.
So Ted hasn't said what he's having for dinner yet.
Well, no, I was asking Larry.
Oh,
And I said, I don't know.
I have a feeling Larry is having a problem finding the mute button. Because it looks like he's laughing.
Yeah, sorry. I was doing some other stuff and I had, several things open over top and I covered up that band down there so I couldn't unmute myself. What did I have for supper? Well, let's see. That was a long time ago, 3 hours ago. I guess I was just chicken, pasta, things like that, a little bit of wine sauce in it. It was a quick meal so I could be on here. I've been working all day the last 2 days. I've been out and outside working, getting as much done before the snow flies. And so.
Well, it's a traditional question, but since Clark
Yes,
is,
and you're surprised by asking me, but yeah.
well, the thing is that Clark is Canadian and he's asking an American, so I decided to ask a Canadian.
Well, I suppose if I asked you tomorrow, it'd be turkey.
Yes.
Well, you got me live here. I just wanted to extend best wishes for you all to have a safe and happy Thanksgiving.
I thank you.
yep. Same to everybody. I'm going to take off. See you later.
All right. See you later, John.
Yep.
Now that we're in the after show, there was something I wanted to show on my presentation about Zorro tools.
Sure.
For you guys in a closer climate, colder climates, they also have replacement parts for monkeys.
Very good. I'll remember that.
Now,
As I get older, it's usually my toes and my fingers that mind it the most nowadays.
If you see a monkey walking down the street looking for a Boilermaker, it's cold.
Now, we've only had some nights here dipping down below zero here in Toronto. We're near a large body of water. It helps us out a lot. Al Collins is just north of me, about maybe 30 miles. And he had 2 inches of snow today. And don't know about Clark up north. But no complaints compared to what they're having on the West Coast in BC, and then down in the Maritimes, Nova Scotia, Cape Breton, particularly in Newfoundland, got hit with a good heavy storm.
Yeah, we had in my area here, there were some pretty bad flooding. No snow that I know of, except up in the mountain passes. But yeah, a week or so ago, there was flood warnings all over the place. Pretty bad. 100-year flood levels.
Yeah, that's in BC. They're flooded out. The main CPR line, transcontinental line, is, I guess, it's been disrupted in 16 locations. Their president was talking about getting it up again in 8 days, but seeing the devastation and the slides, it's all mudslides and that, and taking out large portions, and it's gone. There's probably about, in some places, 200 feet of material that was below the rail grade and the Trans-Canada Highway down below that and gone. What's surprising in one photograph, I'd say the slide area in that photograph might be 1,000, 2,000 feet. And there was the railway grade was above the highway, and the highway passed underneath the railroad, an underpass. Well, the abutments for the railroad are still there. The bridge is still there, plate girder bridge. The pylons are all exposed. That was below the abutments. And the fill that was approaching this bridge, holding the track, is gone. And the track is suspended there. Maybe 600, 700, 800 feet. It's just up there. It's like a tightrope.
Yeah, I think the only thing that'd be able to go across that is a speeder, if that.
It wouldn't be me.
Same here.
I'm sure that the first crews take a train through there, they're going to have their fingers crossed a little more.
Can you fit a loco cab with an ejection seat?
There's an idea. You have to put you in contact with the CP.
Don't laugh. It has been seriously suggested. I kid you not. They're looking at a kind of a last resort type safety features where a high-speed collision's imminent. And for specifically loco crews, they were looking at doing something, either tying them into the seats or shooting them out the roof. It has been looked at seriously. Yeah, it was one of the interesting things I found out when I did an assignment on crashworthiness. It takes a lot of digging to find out where those references are, but they are out there. But, they're not generally available to the public to see. That's all kind of deep research type stuff. Yeah, they were looking at kind of what can they do to crash proof a cab if the crew has got an imminent collision and it's a relatively high speed accident where a lot of energy has got to be absorbed to keep that crew compartment rigid enough to stop kind of collapsing. There's some significant structural engineering got to be done just to design the safety cab was kind of the first iteration. Now they're looking at improving on the safety cab. So, it is out there. There's work being done on it, but again, it's not widely known. And goodness knows what the loco cab will look like in 15 years' time, if there's anyone in it.
If there, yeah, there it is, right there. Well, possibly they can, learn from Formula One cars where the driver is in a compartment that's designed with all the stuff around the wheels to break away, the power plant to break away, as to minimize him being impacted by those heavier pieces on the car.
Yeah, it looks spectacular on TV when a race car goes down the track and shreds itself and sprays bits and pieces everywhere. But by spraying bits and pieces everywhere, the energy of the collision is being absorbed by shredding what's around the driver. And the amount of energy being passed into the body of the driver is sufficient that you don't kind of tear hearts loose inside your body and shred blood, main blood vessels to livers and things like that. Because that's the type of internal injuries that will kill you. So there's some interesting research on how fast you can have a collision and not kill you. And the railway industry has kind of been lurking in the background, but watching what's been going on with things like Formula One and the way cars are designed. There's a significantly different design philosophy between UK design and design elsewhere. The trains that we run in Australia are designed with a different crashworthiness design or crashworthiness, I'll say basis of design than the US version of how do you make a train crashworthy. And so you get the people out after everything stopped moving. And we're probably getting way too technical for model trains.
Well, I vaguely remember when they were doing the rockets, rail cars, sleds, and all that. They were doing that also, and they had built-in ejector seats, but they were also on a very straight track in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. Out in the middle of Nevada, there is a US government funded railway research centre where they do stage crashes to find out what happens. And I'm not sure whether the stuff's generally available on YouTube, but I've seen the films where they've kind of rolled high-speed cameras and they're looking at how the wagons deform in a collision at various speeds. Yeah, nice if you've got a few spare locomotives that you don't need anymore.
I don't think you want to share that with the general public, or your ticket sales will be down the next day.
It was more about how some of the goods wagons deformed. And this came out of the Lake Magentic runaway type fire where everything piled up and the tanks ruptured. So there's been research being done on what a tank car will look like, and it might not look like what they look like now. As well as other type cars like a hopper car, a box car, you know, how much of a sideways impact can they take before they shred themselves? All that type of stuff. So yeah, it's interesting research, but I'd reckon it gets expensive very quickly though.
That's what I was thinking. I don't think I'll be doing any testing here because my hobby budget wouldn't cover it.
Yeah, well, one good thing about our hobbies, our locomotives don't weigh in at 130 tonne and they aren't doing 60 mile an hour plus when they hit anything. And some of your locos weigh in at 180 tonne. Our ones top out at about 130. So you heavier, latest, greatest class 1 type locomotives are close on 180 tonne. And with heavier rail going in, they'll probably break 200 tonne in the next 5 to 10 years. And that's if you've got kind of 2 or 3 of them on the front, plus a few thousand tonne coming through behind, the amount of energy there that's got to be absorbed if you hit anything is absolutely incredible. Thank God we don't have to kind of design our model trains to take that type of impact.
Larry, do you get the Princess Auto flyer?
I have occasionally. I've switched emails, so I dropped. I was getting so much of that stuff, and I get Atlas tools and everything.
Just as a surprise, Dremel's 3D printer is on sale at Princess Auto right now. I was surprised.
Yeah.
That's their newest model.
Just out of curiosity, what type of dollars are they floating around?
I think around 400 or 500
Yeah.
Canadian.
Yeah, yeah, good. Yeah, for experimenting, I guess that'd be an entry level, and of course, then you need a CAD program.
I was surprised. They would never handle something like that before, but they do now.
Yeah.
Has anybody seen the lanterns for the from the mini prints?
I gotta go a little bit lower.
Well, yeah, lower.
How's that?
Now you gotta go to.
There we are.
There you are.
There, yeah,
Man, those things are small for O scale.
yeah, nice though.
Yeah, they're clear.
Yeah,
I plan on drilling a hole in the bottom and putting a very small LED in it.
yeah, just have them sitting on a bench or something, and
Yeah, something like that, or even a guy's hand just running up his
Yeah.
arm.
Yeah.
But they're quite the thing. Put the handles on it and all the ridges and the different lenses. It's crazy.
what's that company?
Mini prints.
Oh, mini prints, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they started with beavers.
Yep.
Yeah, we sure come a long way.
Yeah, well, I think earlier on with this show, it was before I started helping out. I think he was one of the earlier ones to show off some of his stuff.
Yeah. He's got bald eagles now and stuff like that. I was quite surprised.
Yeah, he also has modern people also, because normally when you buy sets and all that, it's sort of almost like in the transition era.
Mm-hmm. That's nice. To all you Americans that are out there, I wish you a very happy Thanksgiving.
Why,
and
thank
don't
you.
eat too much turkey. I hear it's expensive.
Well, that's why I have leftovers. If you do it.
Funny, that's what becomes reasonable.
Yeah.
But after the 7th day of leftovers.
I've had enough turkey.
Yeah.
That's what freezers are for.
Yeah, if you got one big enough to handle all the stuff you throw in it.
I do that and then we forget about it. And after a while,
Yeah.
we start,
A year later, it's out there frozen
looking
solid.
down.
What the heck
Yeah.
was that?
frostburn or, it doesn't look as that appetizing any longer.
Makes it easier to throw away then.
That's a good point, Ted.
You don't feel so bad.
Yeah.
Plus, it's solid. It's not, it's not squishy.
Well,
Yeah,
it adds thermal mass in the freezer. So when the power goes off, it's that much longer before the temperature rises to a dangerous level.
There you go. There's a good
That's a good
explanation
one.
from an engineering viewpoint.
Oh. That was a good show tonight. I enjoyed that.
Oops, I'm
Yeah, it
sorry.
was very good.
Yeah, all the models and that just showing that was nice.
Amazing.
We got a really pretty good lesson on how freight car brake system works.
Very clearly.
Yes.
Yeah,
That was-
that was the fascinating part of that was
Mhm.
I'm familiar with all that, but it was really interesting the way he described how
Explains it.
everything's on the pull, you don't push anything, and that was really neat.
Well, the bleed levers and
explanation.
stuff. I don't think that's available for undercar detail. Like you have to make it like he is, and yeah. Well, it just tells you how much stuff is missing when we think we have a pretty nice car. With a lot of stuff missing still. I guess that's where ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Except when somebody
Now,
judges it.
Yeah. Now, do we still want to keep on going on YouTube, or do we want to end YouTube and then we don't have to be on our best behavior?
Well, I think we're pretty safe right now with our best behavior. We haven't got Clark here now. And
Clark isn't here, so we can be on about that.
yeah, get us off on a tangent.
I hope he isn't too soon. He's too sick.
Yeah, that is true. So, all right, I will end the live YouTube live.